Where people stay candid with you yesterday.
Oh,
I
smoke it
said
too.
to you, Manaus. It's not Manaus. Billy.
It's Berlin. Hi everyone. If you could all take your seats, if the speakers could actually sit in the front row. Yeah, front row. Yeah, front row seats, the best seats in the house. And if everyone could just, yeah, take a seat and then we'll get going. Great. So, John, if we could actually have you sitting in the front row, best seats in the house, just while we hear the keynote speech, and then, yeah, yeah, perfect. Great. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to this really important event on the tripling of renewables target and what the role of solar PV is within that target. Really pleased to have you all here. My name is Sonia Dunlop. I'm the CEO of the Global Solar Council. We are the Global Solar PV Industry Association, representing every step of the value chain from all over the world in the solar PV industry. We're here. One of our main purposes COP this year at COP28 Dubai, which is going to be the most important COP for renewables ever, we think, is of course to push for the global target on the tripling of renewables to 11 terawatts of total installed capacity across all renewables by 2030. And we have succeeded in getting almost 130 countries around the world to already sign the pledge that was led by the Emirati presidency of this COP on the tripling of renewables target. Our mantra is double down to triple up, because it's about tripling renewable energy, but doubling progress on energy efficiency, and of course, fossil fuel phase down and fossil fuel phase out. Global Solar Council, we're part of the Global Renewables Alliance, really pushing this target together with the other renewables technologies, so wind, geothermal, hydro, green hydrogen, and long duration energy storage. And it's been incredibly successful so far. And we're really excited already about the incredibly powerful market signal that has been sent from the tripling of renewables pledge to the global financial markets, to global energy markets, and to the rest of the real economy about the direction of travel that we expect to see between now and 2030. Now, a few words about solar's role within that. So we know that we currently have just over 1 terawatt of total installed capacity in solar PV, and we expect in a high scenario, with the right policy in place, with the right grid access in place, with the right finance in place, especially to the least developed countries and especially to those off-grid locations, and with the right planning and permitting reforms in place, we think we could get to as much as 8 terawatts of total installed capacity in solar PV by 2030. Let me say that again. We think we could get to 8 terawatts of total installed capacity in solar PV by 2030. That is absolutely huge. That is the equivalent, ladies and gentlemen, of 25 billion solar panels total installed all over the world. And we really are ready to deliver. We're ready to deliver in terms of the manufacturing capacity. We're ready to deliver in terms of project development. We're ready to deliver that rollout all over the world and do our part in the overall tripling of renewables globally by the end of the decade. So this COP is about action, it's about ambition, and it's about accountability, because we're also really keen to see a process for monitoring, implementing, and then verifying this tripling of renewables target and all the component elements of that. So we've come here today to bring together a number of key thinkers and leaders from across the global solar PV industry to think a bit more about what does this tripling target mean for us. What do we need to do to make sure that the right supply chain, the right processes, the right policy is in place, and the right finances in place in order to deliver this? and what does the trajectory look like between now and 2030? And I have a number of fantastic speakers lined up, so I'm going to introduce them in a second. We're first going to hear a keynote from Mr. Lucas Junlu, the Chief Marketing Officer of GCL, one of our very valued members of the Global Solar Council and a key manufacturer of and integrated across the whole of the value chain in the solar PV industry, also active in many other technologies as well. And then we're going to have a panel discussion with John Grimes, the CEO of the Australian Smart Energy Council, with Ahmed Nada, the president of the Middle East Solar Industry Association, with Rodrigo Pedroso, the chief counselor at the Brazilian Solar Association, AB Solar, with Nina Skorupska, the CEO of the UK Renewable Energy Association, and with Karim Megerbi, the founding executive director of Ori Sun Invest. And in addition to that, we will also have Laura Williamson, the policy lead at REN21, the Multi-Stakeholder Alliance for Renewables. We're then at the end of that going to have some closing remarks from Mr. Mishra from the International Solar Alliance, who are our very valued partners in the Intergovernmental Alliance, intergovernmental coalition of governments working for solar deployment. Global Solar Council is the private sector voice representing the solar industry. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Lucas from GCL to come forward and give some keynote remarks, and then we'll move to the panel discussion. Thank you, Lucas.
Thank you, Sonia. Thanks for the introduction. Well, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to participate in COP28 and engage in our discussion regarding the essential role of the solar PV industry within the progress of global climate change mitigation. First of all, on behalf of Mr. Zhu Gongshan, Chairman of the Global Green Energy Industry Council and Chairman of GCL Group, I extend my heartfelt congratulations on the convening of this conference. Also, I would like to express my greatest respect to all colleagues and friends who have long been dedicated to promoting the net zero target. Climate change issues profoundly impact the survival and further development of our modern society. A significant highlight of this conference is that its agenda covers the first global stocktake from the Paris Agreement, which provides an opportunity for us to examine the result of carbon emissions taking place in the past several years and assess the effectiveness of those climate actions taken by each country. Although the window of opportunity to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius might get narrower, I want to address to this status quo by using an ancient Chinese saying, the journey ahead may be long and arduous, but with persistent efforts, we will eventually reach our destination. Currently, the electricity generation industry is the single biggest contributor to the global carbon dioxide emissions. Therefore, it is crucial to rapidly decarbonize this industry, which would represent the most cost-effective and feasible path to achieve CO2 emissions target. According to the 2023 World Energy Outlook released by the International Energy Agency under the State Politics Scenario Plan, by 2030, renewable energy will account for 80% of the new additional power generation capacity, among which solar PV power generation alone will contribute more than half. This highlights the vital role that solar PV energy plays during the decarbonization progress of the entire electricity generation industry. While solar PV technology has been around for over 180 years, its large-scale commercialization and grid parity have primarily been achieved in the past 2 decades. Today, China maintains a leading position in the global solar PV industry by leveraging its technological and advanced equipment edges. China plays a critical role in global energy transformation, as well as in acceleration of sustainable growth and development worldwide. Hence, China's full participation and support are essential while the world are working together to achieve the goals of the of the Paris Agreement and mitigation global warming impacts. Future energy leans on solar PV power, and solar energy industry needs China. GCL technology has established in 2006, positioning as a pioneer and a primary driving force in the China solar industry. We have always been committed to the research development and the commercialization of silicon-based materials. Guided by our principle of technology is the primary energy resource, GCL Tech has achieved numerous milestones. In 2009, we piloted the commercial application of cold hydrogenation technology in China, significantly reducing the power consumption of polysilicon products from more than 150 approximately to 60 approximately kWh per kilogram. In 2020, with our cutting-edge FBR granular silicon technology, GCL has again piloted the solar industry at the international stage. Powering by FBR granular silicon's lowest carbon emissions, lowest energy consumptions, and hence lowest cost, we have initiated a new era of greener and lower carbon adoption and applications in the PV industry. GCL's FBR granular silicon, carrying its remarkable lowest carbon emission attribution, plays a crucial role to power the solar PV industry to be the first net zero sector. In 2021, GCL's FBR granular silicon's carbon dioxide equivalent is certified to be 37 kg per kg of production, of course, from the French Environment and Energy Control Agency, significantly lower than the value of 57 kg of carbon emissions recorded by the Tier 1 global peers Siemens rolled silicon. I'll mention the name, of course. The implication is that compared to rolled silicon production, every 10,000 tons of GCL's FBR granular silicon production can reduce about 200,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Therefore, with GCL's tech current capacity of over 400,000 tons FBR granular silicon, potentially we can reduce the industry's carbon emissions by 10.35 million tons every year. And this result could be conservatively estimated to be equivalent to plant over 60 million new trees. Based on EU's October average daily carbon price of roughly 80 euros per ton, the adoption of our FBR granular silicon in the silicon material segment alone will hypothetically add a carbon value of 830 million euros to the entire PV industry chain. Meanwhile, from the CapEx perspective, compared with the Siemens rolled silicon, pioneering by FBR granular silicon's one-way process conversation, the process conversion rate of 99% for every unit production, and granular silicon has a 60% reduction in land usage and labor force, as well as an 80% reduction in power consumption. GCL's FBR granular silicon as a latecom is surpassing Siemens rolled silicon in quality and creating significant cost advantages, establishing a solid foundation for the solar PV energy to strategically position as the cheapest resource for electricity generation in the history. According to 2050 net zero emissions target, global solar PV deployment must grow at a rate of about 300 GW per year by 2025 and nearly 500 GW per year by 2030. However, actual annual growth of global PV installation is only roughly 100 GW. This illustrates that although the PV industry already possesses a relatively mature or in total technology solutions and a clear deployment path, it is still very challenging for the industry itself alone to fully anticipate the narrowed 1.5 degrees Celsius window of opportunity. Hence, I would like to take this opportunity to propose the following. First of all, focusing on energy structure transformation and ensure the smooth transition from the carbon-based to the silicon-based era to arrive. The clean energy transition cannot occur overnight. Developed countries should assist vulnerable nations, particularly small islands, countries, and African countries, in enhancing their capacity to cope with the climate change. For example, they should further reduce the approvals of the new coal-fired power plants consumption plants, because carbon dioxide emissions during production and operation of fossil fuels expand the scope of application of carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology, improve energy utilization efficiency, and promote the global adoption of solar PV technology. Secondly, improving the long-term energy utilization by increasing investment in the global power transmission and attribution and distribution systems, I call TND systems. Later, a renewable energy-based power system requires support from solar PV, storage and computing, etc. High level of digitalization, intelligence, and networking are vital throughout the value chain to drive innovations. Currently, key concern is the mismatch of the investment resource allocated between T&D industry and the renewable energy industry. In order to achieve our climate targets while ensuring energy security, the world must increase or replace 80 million kilometers of power grids, equivalent to the entire global power grid today by 2040. Hence, it is critical to promote the investments and construction of adopting friendly, intelligent power T&D systems to enhance the efficiency, reliability, sustainability of overall renewable power generation. Last but not least, establishing the consensus view of humanity for one community worldwide to share the same goal of rebuilding the new international energy cooperation while solution provided from greener and low carbon technology. Recently, we are delighted to witness the multi dialogues and cooperation between China and the United States. Initiating actions such as establishing a working team to enhance the climate actions, setting a target for renewable energy installation, and proposing joint efforts for effectively reduce the carbon dioxide emission contributed from the electricity power generation industry, etc. While we are continuously enhancing the collaborative innovation and joint efforts to promote basic researches and original innovations, we must address the need for more open and non-discrimination trade policy in the global PV industry. In our view, a global energy cooperation network resulting in a win-win situation, which can only be achieved while smoothly global cooperation, sharing learning resources, and eventually creating mutual benefits for all. As the black swan of global climate crisis rapidly approach humanity, we must accelerate the clean energy transformation, which led by the solar PV energy deployment. Looking ahead, with our focus of low carbon cutting edge technology initiatives, GCL technology is dedicated as an industry leader to drive energy transformation, to demonstrate our commitment and responsibility to the society, to fully cooperate with our current and future potential partners. Together with our joint efforts and devotions, we then can accelerate the new progress of the global climate change mitigation and achieve the net zero emissions target sooner. Thank you. Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you so much, Lucas. That was absolutely inspirational, really fantastic, and really appreciate those comments and really appreciate all the work you're doing to and make it such great improvements on sustainability of solar PV, which is really important in terms of making sure that we're doing everything we can to reduce the carbon emissions in the manufacturing process and make sure that we're maximum sustainability. Ask all the panelists to come forth and take your seats. And then we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion to reflect on what Lucas from GCL said, and also to talk a bit more about what the role of solar is in the tripling target. So please, any order. We don't have any particular order. Is there space for everyone? Okay. Yachim, would you? Brilliant. So I think we have two microphones there on the little table and one here. So that's fantastic. So just for those of you who've just arrived, my name's Sonia Dunlop. I'm the CEO of the Global Solar Council, the Global Solar PV Industry Association, working constantly in partnership with the International Solar Alliance. And we thank the International Solar Alliance for the venue here today in their fantastic solar hub, where they're trying to ease the doing business in solar, ease the deployment of solar globally, and happy to be here today. Um, so we're going to be talking about the global tripling of renewables target, and what the role will be for solar within that, and what the barriers and challenges might be as well. Laura, I think I'd like to turn to you if that's okay, and if you need to, drink something at any point, please do. So you represent REN 21. You're a multi-stakeholder alliance, a coalition of all different supporters of renewables from around the world: governments, scientists, academics, industry, and many, many more. Are you backing the global tripling of renewables target, and what do you think needs to happen in terms of solar in order to get there?
Thank you. Hello. Yep. Is that it? Yep. Okay, great. Sorry, I can't hear it up here. Yes, my name is Laura Williamson, REN 21 Renewables Now, and as Sonia said, a multi-stakeholder network, the oldest one around that really cuts across all the key stakeholder groups, including civil society. Yes, we absolutely, support the doubling down and the tripling up. It's a great starting point. And it's the first time ever that we're actually really seeing this robust discussion happening across the COP. So it's fantastic. We should celebrate it, but we need to push more. It's about tripling capacity, which is needed. But what we're really fundamentally looking at is how do we actually transform our energy systems? So while the power sector is very important, we also have the heating and transport sectors, which actually take up 80% of our total final energy consumption. So while the capacity and deep electrification across those sectors that can be electrified, for example, transport and low and medium heat, we also mustn't forget that we have another part of the equation that also needs to be discussed. I think from the discussions we've been having, particularly with developing country governments, is the fact that for this package to go through and to really have some teeth, i.e., not just be a pledge,
And be part of the negotiated official
exactly.
outcome of
It
this
needs
COP. Yeah.
exactly. It needs to be part of the official negotiated outcome of the COP. It really does need to be tied to financing and capacity building. And the capacity building side is has been talked about, but it's fantastic that we're increasing capacity. What are we going to do with all this capacity once it's there? If it can't be distributed, there's no off-taker, or if off-takers are not ready for it, if the workforce is not there, then this fantastic intention remains a fantastic intention rather than a real deliverable that this community can bring to the climate discussions. And just one last point. Why are we doing this? We're not doing this just because we like to have lots of gigawatts of electrons floating around. This is for people.
That's
This is
right.
for economic, social development. And we really need to make sure that in this pledge, as it gets integrated into the text, that people are in the center. So I'll end there.
That's absolutely right. And solar has so much potential to really help people lift themselves out of poverty. Pedroso, you're the chief counselor at AB Solar, the Brazilian Solar Association, a valued member, also a board represented on our board at Global Solar Council. Um, Tell us a bit about the deployment over the last years in Brazil and what you expect between now and the end of the decade, and how you think Brazil will play its part in the global tripling, and how you see Brazil's geopolitical leadership in terms of the G20 and in terms of COP30. I hope I've got the right number there. In terms on this issue over the next couple of years.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to say many thanks to be invited to be on this panel and to this valuable panel with amazing panelists. It's an honor for AB Solar and Solar Sector of Brazil being here and share our thoughts with you. I'm Rodrigo Pedroso. I'm a civil engineer. I work on the electric sector in Brazil for the last 23 years, and I'm also a member of AB Solar, board of AB Solar. Brazil is growing as much as possible. We have growth exponentially on the last years, and every week we need to update our numbers. And I have the number very fresh from yesterday night. And yesterday night we reached 36 gigawatts of installed capacity.
Total installed capacity in Brazil,
Yes.
36
36.
gigawatts.
And something that's very interesting, I thought always about it. Brazil has the biggest hydropower plant in energy production in the world. It's the hydropower plant of Itaipu. It has 14 gigawatts of installed capacity. So the solar sector delivers on the last 14 months one hydroelectric of Itaipu that took 16 years to be built and 50 years to pay its debt. And it's amazing what we are seeing in Brazil right now. And as I said, with these 36 gigawatts, we have something very interesting as well. Different from the rest of the world, where the centralized generation is bigger than decentralized generation or distributed generation. In Brazil, it's the opposite. So we are democratizing the solar photovoltaic in the world because in Brazil you have around 25 gigawatt of installed capacity on GD and 11 gigawatts on centralized generation. It's something that's very important about the democratization of solar energy in the country. And with this 36 gigawatts, we have developed more than 35 billion US dollars on investments. We get more than 1 million of employees. We get we paid more than 10 billion US dollars in tax for the federal government, states, and municipalities, and we invited more than 42 million tons of CO2. So these numbers are amazing. And for the next years, we expect on the year 2024 increase more 10 gigawatts on our electric matrix of solar. And we expect on the next 20 years, the solar it will be the first on the Brazilian electric matrix. So right now, solar is the second on our matrix. Hydro is the first one with around 50%. Solar is around right now around 15%. And we expect on the next 20 years, solar will be the first one. So we are very glad. I think it's and even the green hydrogen that we are talking so much nowadays will increase can increase this number as much as possible as well.
Brazil is supporting the tripling of renewables targets.
Yes, we are very proud of it, and we need to push it as she said because I think it's we need to celebrate, but we need to at the same time to push it more and more.
Fantastic. You've done so much in Brazil. It's just absolutely incredible. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Ahmed Nad, I want to come to you next. And indeed, Rodrigo mentioned green hydrogen, and that's a fantastic segue to yours. So you're the president of the Middle East Solar Industry Association, another valued member of the Global Solar Council. representing solar PV industry across the whole of the Middle East. We many of us went to your fantastic awards ceremony just a few days ago, where so many fantastic and innovative projects from across the region received different awards. It was really an honor for me to present one of them as well. What do you think in terms of your region and the region of the Middle East? What do you think are the potentials in terms of not just, not just generating solar electricity to feed into the grid, power to X, power, using it for other sources as well? And how do you see the forecast for solar deployment in the Middle East region between now and the end of the decade, contributing to the global tripling target of renewables?
Thank you very much. Yes. I represent the Middle East Solar Industrial Association. I'm the president. The Solar Industrial Association in the Middle East is a non-profit organization, just to make sure we are very clear on this. And we have been adopting the knowledge transfer into a region, and that was predominantly a fossil fuel region. So you can imagine the effort that it took for uh, the members and the stakeholders to really convince the leadership of this region that solar industry has a future. I was just talking to Rodrigo before we started in 2012, 13. Nobody believed that, this industry will have any opportunity. So the ship has sailed in the Middle East, prob- uh, probably in the Gulf region, much faster than any part of the Middle East, for obvious reasons. First of all, the framework of the fact that utilities is monopolized to a great extent maybe help this, despite maybe not very conventional in other parts of the world. But the fact that we had in each country like one generation company and one distribution company did boost the ambitions of the leadership when they started to accept that this is an important diversification of energy, and also the opportunity cost that it provides for selling oil. Because remember, we are still a predominantly oil rich nations in the Gulf region. But that's fine. If this was a trigger, why not? At least it pushed the industry to the next level. And then within less than 24 months to 36 months, the same people who were doubting what will happen to the solar industry, and many people thought that offices will be closing and nobody will be here. It's complete opposite. So there was a leadership determination to move forward. And I think what happened in the Gulf region, particularly, is phenomenal for the grid capacity and the commitments from the financiers, despite the fact that we had no access to IFC or EBRD. It was all commercial funding. So all of that contributed to this part of the world to accelerate their commitments. And then they started to see the value also on the grid. Price kilowatt hours significantly slowing down from 11 to 6 to 3. And then last 2 weeks ago, sorry, 2 months ago, we have seen the latest DO6 at 1.68 cents per kilowatt hour. Incredible, and this is still commercially viable. So maybe it looks very low, but everyone is making still some money. Okay. The challenge we
Well, we,
have,
we would hope so. We
yeah,
don't want to
no, no,
lose money on
yeah,
solar projects.
the challenge actually is other parts of the Middle East, okay, where things are not as easy in terms of funding and also in terms of prioritization of this, despite the incredible commercial look to it today. So we are seeing that shift in most of the other parts of the Middle East. Countries in the North Africa region are starting to adopt more ambitious targets, very committed. And also the lenders are starting to see it on the same way because of the economics that have been achieved in the Middle East, in the Gulf region particularly. Why not? It cannot be the same in other parts of the world. So I think the process also of moving those targets has been very consistent. And we see the commitments from the leadership and from the different governments. But more importantly, what we have to see is an accelerated funding mechanism to those countries, and that still is the major challenge we're facing in non-Gulf region area. Uh, the same will apply also even for green hydrogen. So everyone is running into green hydrogen and making the pitch about it. The fact that the Middle East has the opportunity of very low production of energy for green hydrogen, gives it a huge momentum. So I think everyone sees the commercial value, not only the environmental or the climatic value that obviously is the call of our meeting today. So uh, overall, we are very committed to the tripling. We are very capable of doing it. There will be a vast, I would say, um, description of the accelerating steps. You will not see the Middle East growing at the same pace. It will significantly depend on each country, and also to some extent a little bit of geopolitical situation in the Middle East that is getting also sometimes hot in some areas.
But do you think one day we could see 100% renewable Middle East? Because when I suggested this in a panel the other day on the about the Gulf, about renewables in the Gulf, with a very nice minister from the United Arab Emirates, a very intelligent lady, she very well to that suggestion.
I think it's difficult to make it as a commitment in an official call. But I think again we are in a region where again for 50 or plus years have been predominantly taking its economic growth, its talent growth, its education, everything has been around oil. So to make a shift in 10 years, and literally I can tell you it's 10 years, I joined the energy business, the solar energy business in 2013, January 2013. I was a GE guy before. Fossil fuel, gas turbines, F technology, H technology. Bosses were reluctant. How come you are leaving GE to go to an industry that has no future here? So we're talking about 10 years only, which is very short.
Very,
So
very
we have done
impressive.
great actually in this period.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to move on to Nina from the Renewable Energy Association. Nina, it's lovely to see you again. Lovely to be back in touch. So the Renewable Energy Association, the REA, sorry, is a UK association representing lots of different technologies. And I just want to see from your perspective, from where you sit, what do you think needs to happen in the UK and worldwide in order to deliver the tripling of renewables target? And what, paint us a picture of what the world could look like in 2030 once we've achieved that.
Well, thank you very much, Sonia, and thank you for inviting me to speak here. Um, I'm really heartened that the UK government is committed also to the tripling renewables and doubling on energy efficiency. And for me, that is a really great news because in the past history, the UK government was not quite as supportive of this area. But since the energy crisis, and everybody understanding how important renewable energy is for not only because it's cheaper and addresses climate change, but it's introducing an energy secure future because it can be homegrown. But the supply chains and everything like that, we can talk about that some more. In the UK, we're currently at 15 gigawatts installed capacity. So I'm jealous of your 36 gigawatts by a long shot. But in the UK government, they are re-energized the solar challenge to address it. They've created a solar task force. In fact, we've got a member organization of the REA sat here who sits on this task force, Lightsource BP, and they're committed to delivering 70 gigawatts of installed capacity by 2035. So I think that does, in my maths, add up to tripling by 2030, which would be great. Now, in the UK, we already no longer need a subsidy for solar. In fact, power purchase agreements and corporate pull has seen the growth of solar farms with battery energy storage combined now as an offering to deliver renewable power to our system. But the biggest challenge is, and I think this is one of the considerations across all of the different regions, is making sure that the landscape is ready for all of this different types of solar, whether it's an urban intense nation like the UK, or you have vast expanses of land where you can install solar farms without too much interruption on people or their concerns. And the areas that we're concerned with in the UK are the grid and also making sure that the network can connect up all of the solar, the planning, the engagement of local communities, Um, and also the discussion of what is continuing to happen, this food versus fuel, but it's actually land usage conversation about the debate of what should land be used for. And for that, that needs education in every nation about if you're using land for solar, this does not now mean you cannot have agriculture and a good balance there. And I think that's something that in the UK we can work with all of these tackling these issues now and also market mechanisms that we can share that internationally because we have to be thinking about all of this upfront in order to enable this to happen. A little like yourself, I'm a fossil lady, 35 years in energy. So, my background's in coal combustion, believe it or not. But I've been,
Oh,
I do admit it, okay? So, but like you, the revolution we've seen now in 10 years of before trying to persuade people that renewable energy, solar, wind, bioenergy, whatever, was a hobby. This is now the serious future of delivering secure, affordable, and clean energy in a democratic way across the nation. Thank
that,
you.
and you are, all of you are the living embodiment of the energy transition. You've made the transition yourself, and we're very, very happy to have you. John, if I can come to you now, John Grimes, the CEO of the Australian Smart Energy Council, also working across the Pacific. It's great to see you again. I was wondering on your side, can you tell us a bit about what's happening in Australia, about the fantastic and incredible growth you've had in terms of residential solar, which will form in many ways the backbone of the unstoppable solar boom that we are already seeing all over the world, and how you see it from where you sit in Canberra in terms of the global tripling of renewables target. Is this actually going to help deliver more investment into solar in Australia?
So thank you, Sonia. As a starting point, first to acknowledge the ISA, a great organisation and leading the solar, particularly in the developing world and the equatorial regions of the world. The Australian government has signed up to the tripling pledge. That's really good news. And the Australian government has a target of 82% renewables by 2030. So we're currently sitting at about 34%. So we're going to go to 82%. But I actually think we're going to go further than that. And just to pick up on your point that you started with, we're going from 1 terawatt to 8 terawatts, right, by 2030. I think you're right. And the reason is this: the world is electrifying everything. We're seeing the electrification of hot water, so heat pump technology. We're seeing, so everything that can be electrified is being electrified, and it's being powered by renewable energy and principally by solar technology, but not exclusively. But solar is really at the core. And that's true because it is the cheapest way to generate electricity, right? It is pure economics driving this. So first, we've got that massive electrification. Secondly, we're not just talking about replacing stationary energy, coal and gas and whatnot. We're actually in the throes of electrifying our transportation fleet. Now that process has begun, but we're at the bottom of a rapid hockey stick in transportation electrification.
A
So we're
good
also going to
hockey stick.
a
A
great,
good
a
hockey
great
stick.
hockey stick. And so the idea here is that we're going to also replace oil and diesel, petrol, throughout the entire transportation fleet globally. Right? And then you talk about the opportunities for renewable hydrogen and projects like the Australian government wants to pursue, which is to actually take iron ore, refine it to make iron pellets, and actually instead of dig and ship, value add, and then make that as an input for the global green steel initiative. Now, to do that actually requires an investment much greater than the generation capacity of our stationary energy. In fact, something like 7 times more than our stationary energy needs, right? That's just to kickstart this thing. So this is going to happen. The transformation is underway. It is going to be extraordinarily rapid. For places like the Pacific, this means good news for people, because today island states like in the Pacific are powered by diesel generators, extremely expensive, dirty, polluting, right? You can actually replace that with microgrids, with solar plus storage, and actually transform those economies and those environments. You talk about the developing world, access to energy. So where you don't have grid access, go straight to household rooftop or just solar panels on the side of the road, right? Powering a mobile phone, bringing light, now enabling education, really a fantastic story. So I think this is a global transformation underway. I'm so pleased to be part of this whole global push, colleagues from all over the world. And I think, friends, hold on to your hats. If you think the last 10 years was transformational, meet me here in 10 years' time and we'll say, holy dooly, what just happened?
That's Australian for we made a lot of progress. Um, um, I want to come to you now. You're the founder and director of Orisan, a company based here in Dubai. So we're on your home turf, but you operate all over the world, bringing projects and financiers and making projects happen on the ground, large scale projects. Tell us a bit more about what you're finding in terms of the barriers and whether you are optimistic about achieving this tripling of renewables target, the 8 terawatts of total installed capacity for solar, and what you think needs to happen. And then after that, I want to come to John and to Rodrigo to talk a bit about this diplomatic rhythm that we're hoping to see. We're going to Baku, then we're going to Brazil, and then hopefully to Australia. And what do we need to achieve at every step of the way? Karim, over to you.
Thanks, Enel. Yeah, in the last 3 years, we closed 650 megawatt of solar and wind in emerging markets. And we think we'll reach the gigawatt in the next 12 months. So just to give you an idea, we work in Kazakhstan, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So very different markets, but mostly emerging markets. So we have and we work with everyone in the market. So both developers and investors. We do have strategic partnership, but we like to assist everyone. So therefore we have a kind of global view of the different markets where we work, and what we see on the ground are, you know, indeed it's very difficult actually for some countries to scale up renewable energy. I'll give you some ideas about numbers. So first of all, coal globally is responsible for around 40% of our emissions. So we need to have that as an idea that 40% is coal. Then coal, 2/3 of coal actually is consumed by China and India. So that's the big numbers. And when you look at population, when we work in the Philippines, 100 million, Vietnam 100 million people, Bangladesh close to 200 million people, etc. So when you look at actually the markets and if you look at Vietnam, for example, Philippines, 40% of their energy mix is coal. Okay. So when you look at actually where is coal and the population and countries which are dependent on this energy, and where actually you have the economic growth, which is the Southeast Asia. Actually, these are countries which are quite difficult in terms of land. For example, Bangladesh, it's flooded most of the time. You have very scarce, land, and it's very difficult actually you have biodiversity, environmental issues, etc. So in this context, what we see is the following. OECD countries were no longer growing somehow economically. Our growth is less than 1%. So what we're doing here is replacing a current energy system with renewable energy. So the flexibility on our power system is already existing. For example, if I take the UAE, we have gas turbines. Now the LCOE of solar is below the marginal cost of gas. So there is absolutely no need to do anything. You put solar and you just balance with the gas. But when you look at Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, etc., where is the flexibility? Nothing. You need to build both the grid and to decarbonize everything. And that is where we see the issue. So how to solve that? So what are the constraints, number one, and how to solve that? So number one, in terms of constraint, I would say access to land, political, regulatory framework are very much complex actually in these different countries. So some people say that it's actually to prevent these technologies to develop, but frankly, it's like we're building nuclear plants. When you build a solar plant, which is basically two things like this and a table. It's the table. It's just that it's producing electricity, but you put table like that. And so you build tables, but the regulatory framework is for a nuclear plant. So that's number one. overwhelming, complex regulatory framework. If you take Philippines, you need to have, secure the land, and you have a whole process to do that, to change the use of the land, the situation, from agricultural to industrial, etc. It takes years. You have risk all over the development process, and one can lose actually the $1 million invested after 3 years or 4 years. Why would you do that? So number one, the regulatory framework is overly complex. And number two, and that is for also for association and for everyone here, is that ultimately it's not that easy to build the grid in a way that you can have a high penetration of solar from day one, not from day one, but progressively as you build the grid. And that is missing actually net zero scenario done by utility. You'd have, for example, in Australia, was very good, actually, the ones which has been performed. And in OECD countries, you have more and more. But I don't see that one in the Philippines. I don't see it also. Even India actually has no studies like that. And that is missing because ultimately the people at the Ministry of Energy, the people in the utilities, etc., although they are very good professionals, it's extremely difficult to have this global vision. So in India, you have the round-the-clock projects, you have batteries, they're trying to have a power pool, but you see all that is building, whereas actually the penetration rate in some states, it's only 10 or 20%. So how to do that without, investing massively, continuing to invest both coal and renewable energy, like in India. In India, the share of coal has not decreased in the past 10 years, whereas in China, is not decreasing, but it's decreasing slowly. So India, yes, it's stable. So how do you do that? How do you fuel growth without that? That's the message we need to hammer. Remember, 2022, $7 trillion has been spent by the world globally for externalities on fossil fuel. The idea that fossil fuel is cheap and can fuel the world it's a scam because globally we're paying 7 trillion. So it's the IMF study last year. I mean, it's monitoring the
And
investment in fossil fuel.
And I can tell you, we at the Global Solar Council are planning to engage with the IMF to get them to change the way they think about renewables, change their renewables modeling to make sure that's better taken into account in their modeling. But what you say is totally right, and your experience of the different regulatory frameworks, how long it takes to change the classification of the land in the Philippines, how long it takes in Burkina Faso, and so on, is so we should write a book about this. It'd be really fascinating. But I just want to say, you mentioned India. We heard from GCL as well. It is so important to get India, China, and indeed all of your governments to push here in Dubai for the tripling of renewables target to be included in the final official outcome of COP28 Dubai. We know it's in there in the draft. We know that there are pressures to pull it out because of some of the controversies around coal and so on, but we can all agree on tripling renewables. And so it's really important that China, India, and all the other countries around the world support that. But talking about the COPs, and I know the world, there's kind of like the real economy, and then there's what happens in negotiating rooms in COPs, which is like a whole other parallel universe that most of us will hopefully never have to encounter. But so next year, it's almost confirmed. I think we're going to Azerbaijan. COP29 is going to be in Azerbaijan, in Baku. Then the year after, we know it's going to be in Brazil. And then we're hoping that the year after that, we'll be going to Australia for COP31. So let's just think a bit, what do we want to achieve by COP29, by COP30, and by COP31? By which point we'll probably about 5 years or so to go to achieve the tripling target. So, what do we need in place? What's our roadmap for what we need in place by these different milestones in order to be well on our way and be able to really fly all the way to the end of the decade? Rodrigo, tell us a bit about the Brazilian COP and what you want to see there.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the COP in Brazil for two most reasons. The first one, to show the world what is Brazil, because sometimes I feel that the world does not know Brazil very well. We has our electric matrix 85% on renewable. And besides it, and it is a very high number, last year, 92% of the whole energy in the country was consumed by renewable sources. So because we have so many hydropower plants, and Brazil has 66% of its land preserved. We have the biggest forest in the world, and sometimes we see in the media that Brazil is doing very bad for the climate, for the weather, and for sure we have some illegal deforestations, and it happens. We need to be punished, and these people need to go to the jail. But Brazil is very huge on renewables. Brazil is very huge on agriculture. Every one of each 5 plates of food in the world are supported by Brazilian agriculture.
So one in five
Five.
plates of food in the world are supported by Brazilian agriculture.
Yes,
It's cool.
yes, and this supporting it's coming from sustainable agriculture of so many percentage of this of the whole agriculture in Brazil. The agriculture represents 1/3 of the GDP of Brazil, so it's very huge for us. And renewable will be a very strong, powerful for Brazil. And becoming to the COP, I think will be very important for the world knows about more about Brazil, and Brazil shows because the, the reason that the world do not knows too much about Brazil, for sure, one of the reasons because Brazil cannot communicate very well. So I think we will help the world to know Brazil, and we will help Brazil to show the world what we are. And I'm very excited about on the COP 30 that will be in Brazil. Will be 10 years of the Paris Agreement. So right now, this year, we are making the balance of the Paris Agreement, and for sure on Brazil, after 10 years of Paris Agreement, this topic will be a trend topic in the COP as well. We can make balance, and I think I'm very confident that the renewables will push very hard until there. The triple of the renewables, the double of the efficiency, and the replacing of fossil fuels. I'm coming back to Brazil very happy and very excited, and I hope I will not see anything different until next Tuesday. I think we will achieve this goal until Tuesday. I'm very confident about it, and I expect, and we are pushing our Brazilian government through our association, through our relationships with the government people, and I hope all of you are doing the same if you are governments. And I think
We
Brazil
are.
will celebrate, and all the whole world will celebrate about this new world that's coming, and COP is making a very efficient uh, way to keep it in the pathway.
We are, and this just proves to you how politically influential a lot of the solar associations are around the world, with constant dialogue with ministers. I know you're constantly in touch with yours, and constant, educating and informing the governments of their countries. If we could just go to John now, as we are hoping, but hoping that we will then be able to travel from Belém in Brazil to in Australia, where this is like time travel. What do you want to see in place by COP31 Australia, COP31 Sydney, let's say, so that to know that we are track to triple renewables by 2030?
So, Sonia, a massive breakthrough at this COP, the tripling of renewables, and massive, congratulations to you and your team at the Global Solar Council, working with the peak industry bodies for the whole renewable sector. It was industry through the peak industry groups that got that on the agenda and have prevailed. So my message is industry is really powerful. Together, we can actually do really serious things together, right? So let's flex our muscle. The other lesson is this: when we talk about tripling renewables, about pushing ahead with our renewable agenda, we get massive global support. When we talk about fighting fossil fuels and holding fossil fuel backs, we get lots of resistance. Right. So let's tell a positive story that people can swing in behind, right? Let the other thing take care of itself. Economics is going to kill that, right? So I would say that industry needs to be thinking about what are the next goals that we need to have. Now, here's a couple of ideas for you. One is we now see solar PV at 14 cents a watt production cost. Unbelievable, unthinkable even 5 years ago, right? 14 cents. So why don't we set a goal for 10 cents a watt solar wholesale prices, right? Let's add to that with cheaper batteries. Now the good news is after COVID, a pause in COVID, battery costs continue to fall. We're talking about another 20% reduction probably in the next 12 months. So if you've got cheap solar and you've got cheap batteries and you can roll that out globally, then that underpins a transformation. So let's figure out what are the metrics that we need to be putting. Let's put industry driving the agenda. Let's make sure that industry continues, backs up again in Brazil and hopefully in Australia. And let's bring this home to the end of 2030.
That's right. And it was genuinely the Global Renewables Alliance idea. It was our idea as Global Renewables Alliance to come up with this global renewables target. And what a policy success it's been. And hopefully it will be next Tuesday, even more so. But the job is done. The market signal has been sent. And so true. So you're interested in targets in terms of cost per watt, a bit like almost the Sunshot initiative from days of yore, right? Targets in terms of cost per watt. And I think it has to be said as well that the cost of solar and storage and so many of these other key transformational technologies has come down so much over the last 10 years. And that is thanks to, of course, leadership in key European countries like Germany early on, but then it's really thanks to the investment in manufacturing that has gone in China. Colleagues like GCL that presented earlier, really investing in their processes, scaling up their manufacturing, getting those costs down, and that is why 1.5 degrees is still in reach. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Totally. And big kudos to India, who's now making a massive investment into manufacturing. We're going to need everything everywhere all at once, again and again and again, right? And so to see countries like India stepping up, to see Europe stepping up, to see America stepping up, this bodes well. It's about all of us actually deploying all of our resources to make this happen. And that's why we see these record low prices in your projects in the Middle East is the result of all of that work that's come beforehand.
And maybe we could turn to you actually, because it'd be really interesting to hear, what else do you think the this Dubai COP, this Emirati presidency can deliver? Remember, obviously they are COP president for the next year to come, so there's a whole year of action and implementation to come. What else do you want to see from this COP28 presidency over the next year during their official presidency year in order to roll out renewables, roll out solar, and show leadership here in the Gulf on this issue?
Yeah, this is a very interesting point. Uh, the Gulf region and generally the Middle East in general and North Africa has continuously been dependent on others on food. So, with all this electrification or all these phenomenal prices that we're getting, I expect that we should also target this for something that is for the future of the region and for its neighboring close region in Africa to solve sustainable food production. It's a shame that the Middle East and North Africa sits very close to countries which have abundant resources in terms of land, and we still have famine in these countries. So I would hope that this whole solar or this COP in general, and particularly the solar energy with such, efficient pricing, can impact the next step, which is how are we using this energy? You talked about electrification of the transportation, which seems to be luxury in some of these countries compared to what they really need now, which is food in Africa. So I would expect and I hope really that the agenda of sustainable, nutrition becomes very much pushed through enabling a very competitive pricing of solar industry and renewables in general to solve a very very critical problem that is coming in this area in this part of the world.
Have we seen the deployment of agrivoltaics, the combination of agriculture and PV
In
and solar
in
here?
very few countries, this is on the agenda, but it is not as visible as it is in other places. Again, the focus is the opportunity cost of fossil fuel. Oh, we can run out of gas or oil in 50 years. So let's do energy so we have an energy production. We continue to be a net exporter of energy, which is great. But what for? What's the purpose of that? Okay, so that's really where the leadership needs to think about.
Laura, Nina, Karim, I'm going to definitely come back to you, but please do, if you have any questions, do start to put up your hands as I want to open it up to audience questions. So feel free to start to formulate those in your mind. But Laura, do you want to come in on this issue
Yeah, I just
of
want to
agriculture and food?
not necessarily agriculture and food, but we really need to move from the mise en place of the development of the technology, the refining of the technology, the efficiency, the low carbon footprint of the technology, and really shift our focus that energy is an enabler, which gets at your aspect of agriculture and at transport. I think in the renewable energy sector, we've been incredibly bad about listening to our clients. Who are our clients? What are we doing this for? We are doing this for off takers. We're doing it for industry. We're doing it for agriculture. We're doing it for health. And we have to become much better at listening to what is it that those sectors need in order to decarbonize. And maybe it's not even a decarbonization question. It's about food security. How can renewables ensure that foods are harvested, stored, distributed, tracked, et cetera, in a way that we are reducing waste and really meeting the needs of populations? And what we need to do is that by really being an enabler, is creating competition around our customers. And that is what's going to drive, that's what's going to move us beyond tripling. That is what is going to really drive the need for energy efficiency, is the demand, the demonstration of how renewables can help support those larger objectives, which just happen to be fantastic in being decarbonized and really supporting both resilience and adaptation.
And that just shows that pays tribute to some of the really creative thinking that you guys have done at Ren 21 in terms of, you know, bringing all this big coalition together to support renewables. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Anyone? You must have some questions. Go on. Otherwise, Nina, if I can come to you, because I'd be really interested to hear what are the kind of narratives and stories that you find work in the UK and indeed internationally, in terms of promoting solar in policy-making circles, and do you have any lessons to that others can learn from around the world?
Just a little element about what I'm hoping to see from COP 28 is the finance community really doubling down on getting clarification on taxonomy and definition of where the money is going to be spent. Um, I think many of you people around this room will be aware that when governments have been slow, it's been the corporates who've that pulled through the requirements to deliver net zero because of the ESG reporting, the environmental sustainability and governance. So they now, large corporates, are demanding that they are served by renewable power sources, and they are now driving this through the whole supply chain. So some of the learnings that I'm seeing is now major construction and engineering companies are looking to see, well, where are they getting their steel? So they are working to demand where and how that steel's made, how is concrete made, electrification of their vehicles, whether they're on land or on road. So that all of those things are all happening. But what we're not seeing is that there are people who are the decision makers in the supply chain who are not educated yet enough, and that is the procurement teams. The procurement teams don't understand that they need to value low carbon, high sustainability delivery of supply chains. So, this is now the joining up of the dots from having renewable energy there through to it going all the way through all the elements that life really needs to see. You asked what did you want to see by 2025? Well, I don't want to see any future building or home without solar incorporated in it.
That's
You
right.
know,
New
every single
building.
new, but some people just need homes at the moment and have the power to have a modern life. So it's appropriateness for the different nations, the different priorities. But in the Western country like the UK, the fact that we still build new homes, without solar or renewables or energy efficiency.
It's a
It's
travesty.
appalling.
Absolutely. And California has already put in rules that every single new building from now on is going to be built with solar on it. We were having a discussion with the minister for Ukraine just 2 days ago, saying, well, inshallah, once the war ends and once the reconstruction begins, we want to see every single new building in Ukraine with solar on it. It's those kinds of simple rules that send a clear market signal, bring down costs like you wouldn't believe, and can really lead the boom. Now, I really want someone from the audience to stand up and ask a question. I will not go on with this event until someone asks a question. Who would like to ask a question? Yes, Adam from Lightsource BP, one of the leading global solar developers around the world, uh, uh, born in Europe. Okay, let's do this.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you to everyone on the panel for all the excellent work that you're doing to promote solar and renewables globally. One of the key challenges we have is to triple renewables to 11 terawatt hours by 2030, which is amazing. Is grid, and we're seeing some great things done. John would know about this in Australia with renewable energy zones, where we're building out you get enough scale in areas with good wind and solar where you can augment the grid and pay for the grid because you've got scale. I'd just be interested from other people on the panel. Any good ideas that you can share with us to be used in other jurisdictions on how to roll out grid in a very fast manner, and what sort of mechanisms, how do we pay for it? Be really interested to hear from if anyone has any good ideas, because I think everyone is thinking about this.
Karim, this might be one for you to answer given your experience in so many different jurisdictions. How can we roll out grid fast enough? What are the best practices you've seen, and how can we make sure that projects really are bankable as well? Another
Well,
one from
there
you.
are 3 points here. Number one, which is the easiest one, and is the study actually of the grid and having the capacity to support ministers and governments to draft a vision of 2030 or whatever, and help them to have the capacity to see how to integrate renewable energy and choose which lines, etc. So that is not directly with the private sector, but maybe in line with associations, and through the association you can have that. I know that there are many workshops and many things which are ongoing, but ultimately it's a bit slow, and results are slow to be produced, and you wait for 1, 2, 3 years. Look at Vietnam, for example. It's stalled for years, and the study is not yet there. So having a coherent vision of the grid, and a step by step with the penetration rate of renewable energy, I would say that this is the step number one. Now, step number two is, I will give you the example of some African countries. Many large developers, so this is Africa, specific for Africa, my comment. Many very large developers like Contour Global, so large IPP, both in the fossil fuel and renewable energy, they came to a conclusion that, okay, let's finance the grid. Let's do that. So how do you do that?
You
Well,
mean the project development?
yeah,
The grid.
yeah, let's finance the grid.
Why?
Yes, it's because ultimately what you do is you integrate both actually grid and project into one large project, and you try to project finance that. So it's for very large projects. Obviously, you don't do that for 20 megawatt, but for very large projects, some developers they came to a conclusion. To this conclusion, you need to have the regulatory framework for that. But Contour Global actually had that in countries like I think it was around well. Central Africa. I don't remember exactly where. Then the third point is that together with the minister, like for example in Morocco, you can have also lines to finance development actually. So it's part of the project cost, and you contribute. Egypt was like that actually. Egypt was like Egypt is a good example. Egypt, you have part of the project cost actually, which is to contribute to the grid. So you have the government to have the idea of how to develop the grid, and plus embodied into the project company and capex, you have a participation on the grid. I think now we need to be innovative about that. How to finance this. Because ultimately the needs are big, and if you wait for public finances to kick in, so we really need to work together actually on that.
Fantastic. I don't know if there are any other questions. Yes, a question at the back. Yes. Can we get the microphone to this gentleman at the back? Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Ernest Mkonta. I come from the small kingdom of Eswatini. I operate the grid. Basically, I run the utility. I would like to learn from the Australian counterparts what they have done to mitigate the risks that are associated with solar in terms of grid operation, the non-dispatchability of solar, as well as how do they support um, the grid in the absence of solar, and if solar is the real solution with battery storage. We run a grid with solar integrated into it with a very small battery operating together with it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great question. I think grid operators around the world very concerned, particularly at the beginning stages of solar penetration onto the grid, because the grid was really designed to send energy in one direction, right, from the generator to the customers. And so we know in Brazil actually very concerned about what they call the inversion de flux, right? So the power going in the other direction. Same was true in Australia. And one jurisdiction is a good example, South Australia in Australia. Actually, now there are times of the year when the entire state's electricity demand is met by rooftop solar alone. Not even the large scale solar, not the wind farms, but rooftop solar alone. That means now in every substation in the distributed network, we're getting reverse flows of energy. Now, when that was a theoretical possibility, the engineers were so nervous about it. But when it happened in reality, it wasn't so bad, right? It is controllable. When you get the solar load, which is obviously daytime production, right? And the wind load, which is disproportionately at night, you definitely get some gaps between that consolidated model. But the gaps aren't as big as you think they might be. So your need for storage is absolutely there, and for some backup, maybe some gas, for example, as a backup. But actually the problem, solar plus wind plus storage, absolutely achievable. And so what I'd like to do is actually get the grid operators in Australia who were so nervous, who went through the experience, to actually share that to our
You should.
counterparts around the world. We should do a global presentation from so engineer to engineer, right, talking about their experience. I think it would be very helpful for you and many other grid operators around the world.
I was just going to
Go for it, and then
I was
Rodrigo
just
on Brazil.
going to say that there is a new initiative called the Green Grids Initiative to share this learning of how to enable grids to expand, grow, bring in smart AI technology to be able to manage the loads. And there are some extremely very smart transformer systems that some of our members are developing, particularly to be able to respond to the variability and the nature of solar and wind. But there are other forms of renewables that are dispatchable as well. We don't have to resort to gas.
Absolutely, absolutely. Rodrigo,
Enter.
can we
Enter.
can we hear more about how the Brazilian grid is dealing with this? With the what is it, 36 gigawatts of solar on the system? Are they struggling? And what advice do you have for Eswatini?
Yes, as you know, Brazil is with a continental dimensions. We have a integrated system all around Brazil, so it works very well. And since we started to increase the renewables on our electric matrix, was this doubt about what will happen when the renewables comes aggressively to the grid. And on the past, we made a study with GIZ from the German agency, and we made the conclusion that we can increase renewables on our grid until 40% without anything. So we are very confident the grid will be very reliable with so many renewables. And in Brazil, if you remember, I said on the beginning, we have an opposite position from the world because we have more distributed generation than utility scale. So it supposed to be a big challenge for us. So it's not the Brazilian grid is working as a Swiss clock. Uh,
And you have loads of hydro to back it all up.
yeah, we have the most biggest and cheapest battery in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know if there are any other questions in the audience, but I know that we need to move to our closing remarks from Mr. Mishra at the International Solar Alliance. I'm glad to hear you're here. So, are there any, before you stand up, are there any questions from the audience or anything more from the panel that anyone wants to add? Gone. Okay. Thank you so much to our panel. Thank you for joining
Pleasure.
us. Thank you for bringing all your energy, your perspectives from all around the world. Really appreciate it. And Mr. Mishra, you are the from the International Solar Alliance. Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming to join us. Thank you for hosting us here. Over to you for some closing remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sonia. And I'm quite impressed the amount of rich experience that I'm right now witnessing and the topic which has been discussed. I myself being into this particular segment and solar sector from past 11 years have worked from home lighting system to large scale interstate transmission system. So I gradually got graduated from the small scale DRE system to the large scale system. Now, it has been very clearly mentioned. If you see from the global perspective, you divide the global, scenario into four different segments. One segment is Africa region where we are facing the challenge of energy access. Another segment is Asia and Pacific region where we are talking about energy security and energy transition. And third, I will say that third and fourth both will include European, Europe and America, along with Latin American Caribbean region, where we are talking about energy transition. Now we are discussing about three major possibilities. One is regulatory and policy framework. Countries like Africa require a very robust regulatory and policy framework. And thanks, Laura, you have very well mentioned regarding one should know who your consumer is, and accordingly you have to design your system in such a way that it solves their purpose related to energy requirement that they are having, pertaining to the food security, pertaining to energy access as per the very low demand that they are having. Now second is, thanks to sir, you have done a very great, incredible amount of growth in terms of promoting solar, and solar along with hydropower plant, you have a very constant source of power. So it is very easy to scale up solar and scale down hydropower plant so that your base load situation is being, taken care of. But when we talk about, Asian Pacific region, where most of the time, like sir has mentioned, that it has been run by thermal power plant, it is very difficult. The moment you are putting large amount of solar into that particular segment, you have to curtail the thermal power plant, and then accordingly the moment night, because it is available in the morning, but when it comes to the night time, you have to scale it up, and thermal power plant is very difficult to scale it up in a day's time. So you require up to flatten up the curve with the help of battery energy storage system. For that purpose, you also require a different set of regulatory and policy norms so that you can maintain that curve in a better form and then execute a project in that phase. So each and every country has a specific source of requirement. And this is how the things are being, you have to take care of it if you have to triple the scenario of execution of the project. So I was talking about, I was just listening to everyone, the amount of consumership that you have to understand, that what will be your type of consumer that you require, accordingly the system has been defined. Secondly, what type of voltage situation is need to be taken care of so that you can you can design your solar projects in such a way that you can flatten up the curve so that its solar can be utilized especially at the night time also, and you can maintain that base load as well as normal situation load in a better way. And thanks sir, you are pioneer in terms of this very progressive approach that you are having, and I believe, and I know, I am very much confident enough that it is the supply chain that we are expecting will be going to reduce, increase, and the tariff will be reduced in a better way so that we can triple the effect. So thank you very much for the panel, and thanks Sonia for moderating it and asking us such informative questions. Thank you, thank you very much. So I will request Yuden to give, to distribute a token of appreciation. Yeah, a photo session. Miss Sonia, and I'm Miss Nina. Oh, Miss Lola. Then Miss Nina. Yeah, is it okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's Nina. Nina, I believe that is for ladies. I believe so.